Anyway, so should we get started? I see we have quite a few people already. So,
Yeah, I think we should.
yeah. I want to keep it to an hour. Just for everybody's convenience. The idea was, to have like a lunchtime sort of thing. So, anyway, so this is our first meetup here. So, the first topic is, release notes. So, let me just go to the next slide here. So, just to introduce myself, I'm Gideon Berensmeyer. People just call me Giddy for short. I'm the head of product knowledge at SafeBreach, and alongside me is Moore. Moore, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I manage knowledge for Hunters, which is a cyber startup in Tel Aviv. I previously had experience in managing and technical writing in several companies, starting with financial solutions and lab operation systems and stuff like that. And recently I landed here in the cyber realm, which is very different than other things that I did. And Giddy and I just started talking lately about the need to have a modern community that can take the common knowledge that all of us have as individuals and harness it in a way that is valuable for everyone as a group, as a community.
Yeah, so actually this started off as like a LinkedIn discussion between the two of us. And a lot of the technical writers here, myself included, we went to OnTarget, RightPoint, wherever we did our courses. And then, we finished the little course, and then, maybe do an internship, maybe not, we get hired, whatever. And then we just kind of get thrown off into the wild. And so what happens is, I spoke to a lot of product managers, and they said, one of the things that's kind of lacking in the documentation world, or they're lacking from technical writers, is innovation. And the truth is that a lot of us actually have a lot of ideas, have done innovative stuff. But because so many of us are working in silos, a lot of that knowledge doesn't get shared. So whereas like maybe I'm doing something, like one thing that's innovative in some field, and maybe Moore's doing something innovative in another field, and then Shira's doing something innovative in another field. And because we're so like isolated from each other, except for maybe TechShort or maybe some random forum post somewhere, none of this knowledge gets shared between us. And so it kind of leads to, a lot of product managers and companies feeling that, the documentation is, it's just this weird random technical writer sitting off in the back corner, not really, that involved. And so basically what we want to do is kind of create maybe reinvigorate the community or rejuvenate the community here. And to try maybe, once a month and do something like that, do some sort of monthly meetup where we can, kind of tackle a topic, maybe come up with some ideas on how to improve it or how to innovate. And then we can, put those ideas into practice at our own companies. So, if maybe I have some ideas about how to do release notes better, and maybe some of those are relevant for you guys, and then you can take those and then implement them into your own release notes at your own company. And so that's kind of the goal here. And so, basically, I create a slide deck, but there's not really, feel free to interrupt, feel free to add any ideas of your own, feel free to, basically disagree with me. For example, I'm not the master of knowledge here. I just basically I made some slides just to kind of kick off a discussion. But basically, what we want to do here is basically just initiate a discussion, and so we can try to kind of tackle these sort of topics and then improve, maybe raise the bar for all technical writers in Israel. So with that being said, so we did the introduction, and so then we want to go into release notes. Release notes, this came up quite a bit actually. We see lots of posts about this. I see a lot of product managers were discussing it with me as one area where we can improve on. And in fact, when I looked at at my previous companies, when I looked at the analytics, release notes are one of the most viewed pages there. And so if we want to have like an immediate impact, I think, somebody raised a hand, but so release notes, so release notes are one of the most viewed pages. And if we want to have an impact, this is one place where I think we can do it rather quickly and fairly easily as well.
Where
So,
are these statistics from, Gidon?
sorry?
Where are those statistics from? 65%.
So it's actually release notes. So I've taken those actually from some of my previous companies. It's somewhere between 65 and 70%. You'll see.
Sorry, but it's not like a study that was done or anything.
No.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
just but it's interesting because I've been doing this now for what's over 2024, about 12, 13 years now. And it's fairly consistent across all companies. So if you have a static URL for your release notes, you fairly consistent. I've seen between 65 and 70%. Most viewed pages are release notes, at least for online documentation. But again, feel free to interject whenever you have. Again, this is a discussion here, so maybe I'm just leading it, but feel free to add whatever tidbits you have.
I just want to ask a question to the crowd. I mean, how many of us actually look at the analytics and like have access to data about which article is viewed more? Do you guys do that in your places where you work?
Currently, no.
Interesting.
I look at the analytics, but I also do in some cases take it as a grain. So it's hard to get actionable items out of the analytics, at least the dry analytics. So if it's not qualitative stuff like feedback from feedback polls or whatever, so a lot of the analytics isn't so useful, like time on page, things like that. But most viewed pages, that's one I can fairly rely on anyway.
Right. I agree. I think that just looking at the analytics to learn which of the articles are more popular than others, it gives you immense power. I mean, you know what to focus on, you know what to improve. It's a good start to improve your knowledge in reading analytics and getting insights from data.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi, Giddy. It's Penina. Blast from the past. I'm curious to know how many people here document SaaS products, and of those people, how many of you include all of this content in your release notes, or if you perhaps just include the first two, possibly the third on occasion.
So actually that's a good point. There are so I took these 4 categories as the main categories. There are some that break down. So so you have the new features, updates, deprecated things and bugs, and known issues. I saw there were some other side categories, but these were like the main 4. I did list known issues, but I myself don't actually document known issues. When I first started in high tech, I started in support. And known issues are like when you post known issues, you're opening yourself up for customers to complain. And so I always I have arguments with product about publishing known issues. I've always resisted publishing known issues.
I have to caveat that though, because I think that when we're talking about B2C products, where you are writing for millions of users. I mean, when I was writing for Waze at Google, you write for so many users that your main goal is to prevent users from opening hundreds and thousands of support tickets. And the minute you acknowledge that there is a problem and we know about it and we are working on it, it just it's like a charm. Like the amount of tickets is lowered immensely, and I think that that's a difference between B2B companies and B2C companies.
Yeah, that's a good point actually, because I mostly write for B2B, and so what happens is when I publish known issues, I've always gotten things. So what happens when something unknown comes up? And then they say, well, why wasn't this in your known issues? And, well, we didn't know about it. And then it embarrasses us as a company, then the product team and the QA. Moshe, did you raised your hand? Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, in a previous life, I had a startup where we did a lot with AWS Marketplace. I mean, we did a lot where they actually gave us cash, and we worked with the head when they were really trying to push it. This is going back close to a decade, but they actually, this is B2B. They actually encouraged us to put as much in there as possible. Again, it depends on your, on your audience, but we had hired a firm out of the UK, and Confluence at the time, had a tremendous amount sort of built in to help. But, from all your categories here were included, and that purely a SaaS product on the marketplace.
I would also, it just hit me that recently I've been working at startups, and another reason why I don't publish known issues is again, startups were less robust, were less thorough. Whereas maybe I would change my mind about publishing known issues if I was, I used to work at large enterprises as well, where the QA was very reliable, very thorough. In those cases, we actually did catch most of the bugs, and we were very sure that the product going out was very secure, again, very robust. Israeli startups, not so much. So, we have a deadline, we're trying to push, we're trying to innovate, we're trying to get it out as fast as possible. And in those cases, there are a lot more known issues and unknown issues than, I really want to announce. So
the other another issue which we encountered is that the documentation is public documentation. Our current documentation is on a public website that everybody can see, and the product management was more hesitative about publishing known bugs or issues because the competitors, whatever, can see them as well. Whereas in the old companies, it was very important for them. It was a closed, and only people with NDAs saw everything, so it was different.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So these are the main categories. Again, the known issues, I've had long philosophical arguments with products. I guess so. It depends on whether you're in a startup, whether you're in an enterprise, whether you're B2B, whether you're B2C, whether you're behind a login or you're public. Yeah. So,
what frequency do you all have release notes? Because that's an interesting question.
So that's another good point as well.
I write multiple release notes at the same time, 5, 6.
What do you mean? When do you release them?
I have multiple release notes going out every month for very large tools.
Oh, it's separated by products, you mean?
Or by versions?
By products.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like Intel, Samsung, all of these customers.
Or in some cases you have
enterprise. Big enterprise.
So we also have a weird situation where we have a cloud offering and we have an on-prem offering, and the on-prem offering is actually just several versions of the cloud combined. So the SaaS we publish every 2 weeks, but the on-prem like once a month or once every 2 months, whatever the whatever the product feels like. So that also has an impact as well. But again, I still wouldn't rely on our QA to catch all the known issues, or to catch even a majority of the known issues, and then just shoot ourselves in the foot with the customers. Anyway, so just to go back, the purpose of release notes, actually, I listed some of these things. I don't know, maybe you guys are aware of others. So stickiness, which is basically you're encouraging, the idea is you announce new features and enhancements to try to encourage users to use those, and then get the customers to be more sticky, preventing churn. So this is kind of like a sales sort of positioning. So think about it like if you didn't announce anything and you added new features and customers weren't aware of it, and then a competitor came along and said, hey, we just introduced ABC, we see you're using SafeBreach, why don't you come to us? And the customer, maybe you already have A, B, and C, but the customers aren't aware of it. And so then they go to the competitor, or they look at the competitor, and the competitor says, we see you're paying $100,000 a year. We'll give you the same thing with these features for $99,000, and then the customers churn. And I intentionally focus on the business aspects of the release notes, because again, that's none of our content is really written. I never myself read documentation just for the sake of reading it. So there's always like a business aspect to what to do for doing what we're doing. Reducing tickets, I think that everyone can pretty much agree on. We're trying to reduce, announce things, maybe announce changes, deprecations, the issue of bugs, whatever. And then again, increase sales. So again, we're trying to announce new features and enhancements, and trying to, in some of these cases, the features aren't included. We use Document 360 for our documentation platform, and they released some new AI features. And some of these features aren't really included in the base packages. So you're trying to, upsell users. So I don't know if anybody has any other kind of purposes behind the release notes. The reason it's significant is it kind of goes into my thinking when I'm writing release notes. What am I trying to do? I'm not really announcing new features. I'm not really announcing new enhancements. I'm trying to, encourage users to use the new features. I'm trying to reduce the tickets, and then increase sales. And anything outside of that, I really don't take into account. So again,
We have
I would add one
totally
thing.
different goals with our release notes. Okay, all of those are very software related, but when you've got both hardware and software, or only hardware, it's a different ball game, because you've got scientists in the background and it's all working. Machine learning and AI is a big thing. It's all the customers are wanting it up front, but on the other hand, it's got a certain amount of finesse in the writing, and you can't just have it all blah blah and sales oriented. It's a different ballgame.
Yeah. I'm not necessarily making mine, like I'm not adding a lot of marketing fluff. In fact, I'm a horrible marketing writer. I can't do it. Actually, I just got a release notes announcements through my email on monday.com yesterday. Was it Monday? It was Monday, or it was Gong, actually. And they were written really well. They're really nice. But it's beyond me. I'm just not that kind of writer.
That's UX UI. That's not
Yeah.
release notes. Release notes don't usually have fluff. They have like a down to earth element of usability, and that's like not the UX UI. Click here, do the and you're gonna get a $200 gift package if you do that and that. It's a different ballgame.
Yep.
No, I think what Giddy means is that the release notes can come in different channels, right? So I used to
also different channels.
send out,
Yeah,
I think that we're going to talk about it next, but it's interesting to see that these are the purposes that you put down. I also thought about in our company, sometimes we use the release notes to encourage clients to become beta testers of our new features. So we explain about the feature and the current stage of it, and we ask clients to contact our CX department if they want to enroll into the beta program and give us feedback.
I would
In
also
my
add
company, one of the
another. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, Yossi, you wanted to say something. You tried to say something earlier.
Oh, okay, thank you. I would add also to encourage customers to upgrade, because it's much easier for a company to support customers who are on the latest version rather than a version that was released a year ago, and so that's another purpose for.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I agree with you, Yossi. That's like a big part of our release notes is for our AEs and our people out in the field to get our customers to upgrade.
In my company, we're careful to make sure that we include all the fixed issues that were problems raised by customers. We were told that customers actually want to read the release notes and see that the problem they mentioned was taken care of and resolved. They want to see that it's announced to everyone. They feel very proud that they're the ones who discovered something
exactly
that
the
was
same.
resolved.
Yeah, we do the same, exactly the same.
It's interesting. Can you explain more about which company that is? What do you do?
I'd actually be interested in the process, because I know I've seen discussions about this in TechShort about how do you give the customer like an ID number and then they track the ID number in the release notes?
No, they open a ticket and then we have our own internal tickets for it, but they can read the release notes and see that their issue is there.
Yeah, because sometimes so I get a ticket saying XYZ isn't fixed, and then what the fix is actually like we fixed something in the back end, and so the way it comes out in the release note doesn't match like what the customer
So we don't
it
say-
fixed the issue. So
No, we say what the issue was that the customer experienced. Exactly what didn't work, what failed, what had to restart. We say we don't say what we did to fix it. We say what the customer did. And in fact, sometimes if we didn't exactly fix it, but there's a workaround to do, we will put in the release notes because we have the issue and then there are additional information, and we'll write the workaround there for any other customer who's experienced this.
Which company is this, if I may know?
We store data. We're a storage company, data storage. So we
So-
have hardware and software.
When I worked at my previous company, they would tag JIRA issues that were responses to customer generated
Exactly.
problems, and we would just port those into Flare, into the, and they had JIRA ticket numbers, and they could open the JIRA
see,
ticket.
that's kind
And a
of
lot of times the JIRA ticket is linked to a Salesforce issue. If it's a
But your
customer-
customers have access
so
to
they
your
could
JIRA
associate it.
tickets?
Yes, yes, customers have access to Jira. Jira has a module that's called the help desk, Jira help desk.
Okay.
And
So we don't give
you-
our customers access to all JIRA tickets, but
Not all the JIRA tickets. It was a
No,
ticket with a closed lid, and all those JIRA tickets were
Right.
linked to Salesforce tickets. So they
Right.
could associate the fix with the issue that they had opened.
Right.
But in my current company, we do proper, more extensive release notes for on-premise products, but I work for pure SaaS products. And we don't do proper release notes. We create only what's new.
Right.
So that every few weeks we announce, this new feature, that new feature, this enhancement, that enhancement. And they
But
don't
isn't
want
that a
public-
release note?
That's our version of release notes.
My company also, we have in-product announcements of what's new.
Yeah.
Not formal release notes.
okay. So so
Maybe
just
in-
In my company, they use the notes, the highlights from our release notes as their email to customers about what's being included in the upgrade.
Yeah,
So-
here as well.
I write, when I'm writing, when I'm putting together the release notes, I'm putting together as like, I know that some of this material will eventually get forwarded to customers. Customers might not read the entire release, but they'll see these highlights.
Okay, so I'll just keep moving on, just just to keep things moving. So one of the areas I thought, in terms of best practices was navigation. So being able to find the release notes. So one best practice, and I'll just list some best practices I saw. They're not even best practices. Let's say they're Giddy's opinions of best practices, and then we can disagree, agree, take on. You can add whatever. Again, it's a discussion. So I'm not the smartest person in the world. I'm aware of this issue, so. I'm always trying to improve. So one thing is like a tile from the homepage. Again, so in this case, Document 360 does it on their knowledge base, but the idea is to make it clear where you can find the release notes. Static URL. One thing I used to do in the past is I had a release notes page for each release, and this is actually kind of bad. It makes it hard for analytics, and it makes it hard for CS and support. So if you have a single static URL where your release notes are, and just update that each time, it's a lot easier. Again, it also helps with the analytics. It helps support. They just say, hey, just keep tracking, keep up to date by following our release notes page. If you use a different URL for each version, like Q1 release notes, .com, Q2 release notes.com, whatever, it's more difficult. So I recommend doing a static URL, at least for online documentation, of course. So internal navigation. So again, we have like the way we do it now at SafeReach is we have one static URL for the current release, and then the older releases, have their own page. Within the page itself, we also have the topics for each, the headings for each section here. So on the right side. So I've seen, I'll show you an example of a company that doesn't do it. But this
How
makes
do
it a
you
lot
make
easier.
the static URL? How do you make the static? You've got separate release notes for each subversion, but you also have a static URL. How does that work?
So this is kind of the annoying bit. So basically, every time I have a new release, I update that static URLs page, and then I create a new page for the previous release. So let's say the URLs, safe reach at release notes, /.com, safereach.com/release notes. Next Sunday I have a release. So on that day, I'm going to publish the new content on that URL, and then I'm going to create a new page for the old version. So we're releasing 2.2 in a week. So I'm going to make a page for 2.1. Right now 2.1 is posted. So 2.1 will get a new page next week because it's like an archived sort of page. And then the current content will go on the 2.2 content will go on the releasenotes.com/release notes page.
Does that have any meaning if our knowledge base or our page is hosted in a private and password protected knowledge base?
So ours is actually password protected. So again, so what happens is support CS, whoever, all the marketing guys, they rely on one single URL, and so it goes out to them, and then they have it saved, and then I don't have to. CS doesn't have to come to me and say, hey, what's the URL for the latest release notes? We always have the single URL for the latest release notes. It reduces the burden from me, really.
I think I'm gonna adopt this. It's gonna save me a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and also again, it makes the analytics a lot more accurate because, like, so I said earlier, I see 65 to 70% of the most viewed page is the release notes. But if you start breaking that up into versions, then you lose that information. Mm-hmm. And so again, the internal navigation, again, we use headings, and it's automatically generated. Again, I recommend doing this because it's for certain users, they don't care about certain types of features or updates, and so they can generally skip along to whatever they want to see. Versioning, again, break it down by version. That's not too exciting. So one thing I was trying to find some examples of what to not to do, and Microsoft acquired a company, Power BI, years ago. But so it's under the Microsoft umbrella now, and actually their release notes are kind of horrendous in a way. So like there's no internal navigation here, so you have to just kind of look at the headings and guess where you want to see. On the left side, I tried to find the release notes. It was actually quite difficult because they actually broke their content down into technical writing terms. So you have tutorials, you have an overview, you have concepts, you have how-tos, you have a reference. I learned these kind of ideas when I was doing my internship and when I was doing the course at On Target and afterwards. But these are technical writing notions, not notions really understood by users. They don't think I should look under concepts if I want to see the release notes. So it was really, and this is Power BI. This is one of the major players in BI analytics, and they're owned by Microsoft. And so I was actually really surprised to see this. Yeah, so this was actually kind of horrendous. Again, if I'm a user,
if you have an effective search mechanism, I don't know that anybody really tries to navigate to.
I heard
just type in what's new in the search and they get there.
I heard about a research that they did about people who browse and people who search. Really interesting. The way brains work differently, and there are people who actually rather browse the navigation tree instead of searching, because it gives them like an understanding of where they are inside this knowledge space.
I actually saw that for developers. Actually, there was an article, there was a study about that on like there are different types of developers and how they use API documentation differently. But I think the same applies for.
Actually, just on a very interesting note, there's a study from a professor here in Israel. I think he's at Bar Ilan with a professor from Santa Cruz, that they did fMIR studies and showed that navigation uses like 1/10 of the cognitive resources that search does. And so people in general will go for navigation whenever they can versus search.
I think one thing, navigation gives you some, like Moore mentioned it, but it gives you some context. So even if I'm new to the site, maybe I'm not looking for the release notes, but again, the navigation tree can give me some idea of what's going on in the product.
Right, exactly.
I mean, maybe I'm not
it-
interested in the
it's not-
documentation, but I'm skipping along
Right.
just so I get an idea of how the product works, even
Right.
if I'm not actually going into articles themselves. But
I see that we have a question in the chat. Why Doc 360? What's good about it? I think that this is like a completely separate discussion. Gideon and I are Doc 360 geeks, I think. And I swear by it. I mean, it changed my life in documentation terms, and I really love to expand.
yeah,
on it.
I won't go into tools at the moment. But like yeah, I'm a Document 360 fan, but I just use it because I know how they were writing their documentation anyway, and I want to use it as an example. So don't it's not I mean, it is my preferred tool, but don't don't take anything from that. So it's nothing about the release. It just it was an example I was aware of, and so I didn't have to search too long for it. But okay, so I don't know if anybody has anything else to add in terms of navigation, best practices. Okay, so if not, so in terms of UX, again, I think they're the basics that we're all aware of, like, organization, clear, consistent. I think the kind of basics that any technical writer should be doing anyway. Writing things in bullets, context of changes, that sort of stuff.
Before you skip to the next slide, context of change is something that I learned from a product manager that I was working with. And I was very young in this business, and she was very experienced, and she kind of guided me how these things are done in big companies like Google and Meta and stuff like that. And there is kind of like a formula of writing about each item. So it goes something like in general lines. Until now, we used to do this, but starting now we can do that. So you're kind of giving context to what was previously available or what was available for the user until now, and how that is improved in this version. I see that a lot of release notes are departing from this formula. Sometimes I find it really, really useful. I mean, it just instead of racking my brains on how to frame the new addition to the feature and, thinking about gazillion phrasing options, sometimes I just revert to that valuable formula that I learned, and it just works like a charm.
How about the way you write it? Do you write it in third person? Do people write release notes like the application? We always write our documents saying in second person, like, how do you do this? You do this, you do that. But in the release notes, I seem to see that people write in third person. The application now does. What's the accepted thinking on that?
So I just keep it consistent with the rest of the documentation, but I don't know.
Agree.
I don't know. Maybe there are other opinions.
I write it in second person because you're still talking to the user. You haven't changed the perspective here.
Agreed. I read it toward like you can now. You have the option to.
The focus should always be on what's in it for me.
Exactly.
Who cares what the application does? It's what benefit I, as a user, am getting, or what my heartbreak is going to be because of these changes or because of bugs or whatever.
Agree.
I think that kind of works if you're not dealing with bugs. Like, I think with bugs, often the user didn't do anything. And you're not giving them anything they can do. You just have to say it was fixed.
Right.
So in many situations, if you're if you've got a new feature, of course, you're going to put you. But I think there is a slight shift if you're just documenting a bug fix.
So I would present it prior to April 2024. This
Yeah, you
behavior
could. Yeah.
now.
I think if you write your release notes by saying you used to be able to do this and now you can do it the new and better way. So that's really good, providing context. But you have to be very careful, in my opinion, because you run the risk of putting too much emphasis on the way you used to be able to do it, rather
Right,
than
it's
the
a
new
very
thing.
thin line.
So you have to just be very cautious with that. That's my
You
only
can now.
comment.
Forget the past, but you can
Yeah.
now.
You can now. I love that.
Yeah, I was trying to write for what is going forward. What's past is past, and no reason to get into a restriction that existed. Sort of, focus on the new feature focus on the
That's
bus.
right. The other point is that, like, to really, really careful about saying that our application or something bad was happening. Like, if you're writing about a new feature, to say, like, before we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. Sometimes it's not so. We're always very careful to say we weren't bad. We'll be much better, but we won't do something bad before. So they always have to be careful about that.
Right.
Okay, so just moving on to the next slide. So this is in terms of UX. So one thing I hadn't done previously, it was something new I started at SafeReach, was we created like a overview video. And basically people could interact with the video and they could skip to the section that they were interested in. So if they had new features, so we had a new dashboard called the Security Posture Optimizer. But if they weren't interested in that, they were interested in contextual analyst per test, they could skip to that. We found that people were watching the video. Like, we always kept it, this video was a minute and 25 seconds. We always kept it under 2 minutes. We actually found that the videos were hosted through Vimeo and then posted online. And so we had analytics on the video, and we found that like 85% plus were watching the full video. And so it actually gave us more data about what people were doing, that they were interested, that they were watching the full video. Whereas like with regular release notes, I couldn't actually, I could see that they opened the page, but I didn't know if they were actually doing anything with it. And actually, we got a lot of good feedback, also from CS, from like internally within the company, that people love the videos. They stopped reading the release notes. They just started going through the videos, and then if they had something about bugs, they would skip to the known issues or bugs, whatever whatever they were interested in. So actually,
one second, Giddy. Are you saying that you basically put your entire release notes into a 2-minute video? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, features and enhancements. Yeah, not bugs, obviously. And so So now, maybe larger companies that won't work. We have a 2-week release cycle. So again, there isn't that much content to put in, and it does create a bit of overhead for me. To create a video, it's a bit more work, obviously, but customers were really engaged with it. And again, like we had the analytics to see that they were really going through the whole video. So it's something to keep in mind. Again, we put it at the top of the page, and customers were doing it. And we also put in bookmarks so people could skip ahead to whatever, for each feature. So.
But does the video kind of does the highlight? It doesn't go into the fine.
Right.
No.
What's going on?
No, so this one had 3 minutes. So it would be, I guess, it had like an intro and an outro that was a few seconds. So let's say it was basically a 1-minute-and-15-second video. This one for 3 features. So again, but it also gives them a lot of content. Sometimes you aren't aware of what you read the headlines and you aren't that interested in it because you can't see it yet. But this actually showed them at least where in the UI it was, it existed. It was a bit more interactive than just a regular image or no image at all.
Does that have a voiceover? Did you have a voiceover on that video, or is it just like clicking?
I was the voiceover.
Oh,
so
they got JD's South African accent.
To be
the touch of London or whatever.
To be honest, I was actually fired and replaced by like Kevin, some like Microsoft voice assistant, but like text to voice thing. And, you know, I tried to use that sort of stuff like 10, 12 years ago when I was like doing instructional design, and it was horrible. Now the voice stuff, the text of speech stuff is really good. And you can put in, like, if you put in commas and you put in like exclamation points, it actually sounds it sounds a lot better than I do. So yeah, so my salary was reduced by like 50,000 a month when I lost
If
the.
you ever heard Giddy on a video, you'll remember it because it's fast and furious. There's no stopping.
No.
It starts and about halfway into it, you're like, is he breathing? Is he breathing?
Yeah.
Is he, no, I don't think he's breathing. He's just going.
Yeah.
Is your user guide also in video once you've done your new
Yeah, but they're different videos though.
So you have to keep swapping out pieces to show the new features in your user guide also.
No, so I have a release notes video, and then I have videos for each feature. Ideally, anyway, depends on how much time I have. But I also mentioned GIFs. I use GIFs at a different company. Those can be quite effective as well, especially if you don't have time. I couldn't get GIFs to work in the presentation, so just, you know, imagine that this GIF would work. But yeah, those are actually, I wasn't really aware that people are still using them, and then I got to a company where they were already in use, and yeah, they're actually quite nice. They're a lot better than pictures. Clear links, actually, so going back to the Power BI release notes, you know, that I didn't like, this one actually, I think they were very clear about where like the links were going to. So, you know, so like they had a blog post, which would probably be more marketing focused. They had videos, and then they had an article, which I assume was about documentation. But if I have to assume, maybe it wasn't really that clear of a link. But again, I actually kind of like their approach about offering 3 different links for, you know, different types of content that you were looking for. So just going back to UX, I don't know, does anybody else have any other kind of things maybe that they can think of? Again, I have a very, I'm from Ohio. I'm very limited in terms of brain activity. Yeah.
Screenshots and images, those are important also. I know they're kind of old school, but they still bring interest to the page, I think.
That's true. They break down the text and they give the eyes some relief.
Different learners learn, you know, people are more visual and some just like want to scan through notes.
Yeah, so it's interesting because you know, API documentation release notes, like if you go to like GitHub, for example, they're basically like README files. There aren't images. They're literally just, they look like README files a lot of times, and they read like README files. And so it's interesting. So I guess you do have to take the audience into account. So like in most cases, you know, if I was doing release notes for a developer site, I wouldn't actually put a video in. I actually think in most cases, the developers won't read or won't actually view the video. They want to just scan the text and quickly go to whatever they want to do. But they're less interested in watching even a 2-minute long video about other things that might not be relevant for them.
But if you're following your 3 points that you were saying, one of the functions of the release notes is like upselling, and then images help in that. Like if part of it is to encourage people, then images.
I always am putting in a lot of, in my current company, I'm putting a lot of screenshots in my release notes because I have sort of a low confidence level that our product is a very new product and it's constantly being developed in that arc. And so I always have this belief that the customer hasn't really explored all parts of the UI. So if I'm throwing new features at them that are taking place in the UI, I have to really give them a lot of breadcrumbs to get there.
Who are your users? Are they developers? Is this B2C or B2B?
B2B. My users would be verification engineers, testing engineers.
Okay.
People like that. They might not be too UI. They might not be too UI oriented people.
Huh.
To throw out a question, would people like if you had the option of doing a GIF over an image, what would you do?
Depends on how complicated the user has to do something and how complicated the actions are. I would show them how rather than a static image.
I agree.
I've come to a place where I like images in my release notes because they're kind of brief and they're just sort of a launching point. And I use I like to use GIFs in the online help.
Yeah,
I believe I have more of attention span.
Yeah, so that's interesting because I got that feedback actually that GIFs in the release notes weren't actually good because they said that because they increased load time and things like. I mean, this was years ago, but they increased the load time of the page. Maybe not all browsers support them, and so what happened was they suggested we only use images, and then we save the GIFs for the online documentation where you're trying to instruct a user on how to do something instead of instructing them within the release notes. So I do sort of understand that position, but again, at the moment I've been using GIFs when relevant.
I've also been told that that some of our users print our release notes to PDF and then send those PDFs onto their higher ups to get in their bid for upgrading to a new version or paying for a new feature or something. So apparently this happens more often than one would expect. So I think release notes specifically in our particular case, GIFs wouldn't be.
They would probably show up kind of maybe like a black square sort of. Oh, that would be interesting how they're rendered. That's a good point.
Unless of course we develop black squares and then.
I think, Giddy, we can continue to the next slide.
Sure.
I just want, I want, maybe if we can have like 5 minutes before we part to discuss the next steps, right?
Sure. So the next thing was basically publication channels. So I just want to mention some channels on how release notes are published, and maybe somebody else has some other ideas. So knowledge base I think is fairly common. This was Google Release Notes, which is interesting because they added this thing, this little tag here with like features and updates, which was interesting. But again, they publish everything through their knowledge base. Monday, I mentioned earlier, they send like a nice little email that describes the features. And so like they also have labels here for like, this next feature was related to integrations, for example. You have blog posts, HubSpot again. They have their own release notes through blog posts. And again, it's not so markety. It looks flashy, but it's not actually that. The content itself is maybe I would say dry, like regular release notes, not so fluffy. I'm trying not to disrespect the technical writing field here, but So the content itself is it's still dry, but it looks very nice and modern. So we did the in-app stuff. So basically the first time, so we'll have a release on Sundays. The next time a user logs in, they get like an in-app notification, and then they can then basically they say we have a new product update, and then they can hit the arrow buttons to kind of see the new. They basically get new screen. It has like a carousel sort of effect. So they get screenshots or a video of a new feature. So so before we were doing real release notes, the company was using product updates through Gainsight, which is has like a walk me sort of capabilities. But every time they logged in for the first time after release, they would get this in-app product update. And so this actually Moore can discuss. This is a completely new idea I hadn't heard of. So Moore, if you want to go into details.
In Hunters, we have channels with our clients on Slack, which is an amazing tool to quickly get the attention of clients and ask questions. And they also reach out to us. Our support team and account managers work with them in Slack. And I created this automation that whenever I am publishing a new release note on our doc site, it automatically sends out this automated message with the link to the release notes in all of the channels and like highlights from the release note that will kind of like tempt them to open to click the link. with time, it became really effective. We see that users, like clients, discuss amongst themselves which one of the features they can and want to integrate or want to start using. We see a lot of responses with emojis and stuff like that. And it's really nice to get instant feedback on the things that we develop and we send out. And if you have a channel with clients, it's amazing. I don't know if you guys work in that environment where you discuss stuff on Slack with channels.
So no, this is the first time I've heard of this. So it's quite cool. I mean, it's quite cool, but I could see, I could see my customers writing back to me saying, "Hey, why isn't this?" But
yeah, well, they amazingly, because it's an automated message, they feel like there is not one person behind it, so they don't talk to me. It's kind of like it's a bot. It's called a Slack bot that sends out this message.
Okay, so so that was actually basically it. So again, the purpose of this wasn't for me to tell you guys what to do. Is basically just so we all share ideas about what other people are doing, and then maybe implementing some of those ideas. And again, the overall goal of this, I'd like to, ideally, maybe we do something like this once a month, where we basically have a topic. And I think maybe later next week I can share like a poll and share some ideas of what potential topics could be. Maybe API documentation, maybe
AI tools,
whatever. And then we could each month tackle some sort of issue. No, that was it. I don't know. More, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, no, I think that the goal here is to keep this this train running and keep us updated and innovative and not get too stuck on the things that we learned on our first day on our first course way back when. And just to be agile and learn and implement new stuff. That's what I want to take from this meetup and the following meetups. So I hope we'll continue seeing all of you guys.
And I'll share a feedback like a feedback link, a survey tomorrow. So basically, if you guys have anything like this sucks, or Giddy, turn off the camera when you're talking, you're just the face, just whatever feedback you have, feel free. But no, so again, so yeah, everyone, thanks for joining. I don't know if there are any kind of questions,
Gideon,
comments.
You have our email addresses, because many of us have notifications off for that meetup platform.
So the meetup platform, I actually have to subscribe to Pro to get the email addresses. So I can send messages, but I can't see where I'm sending them to. So
and we might not get them. We don't know that you send them if we have turned off our messages.
Yeah. So I can try the I think I'm on the basic plan right now, so I can try to do the premium thing for a trial. I'll play with it and see what I can do.
Maybe you could put it on the Write the Docs channel in.
Yeah, but
I can put it there.
On there, but
I can put it there. I can put it in LinkedIn. That's fine as well. Also, just one thing. Some people suggested maybe we do this do the meetups in a location. I don't know. I was concerned that initially when we kind of wanted to launch this, there was there still is a war going on, so it's difficult for people to get in. And also, we're located in Tel Aviv, and Tel Aviv is, even for me I live inside Tel Aviv, is a nightmare for me to get around. So somebody coming from outside to get into Tel Aviv would be even worse. So again, I prefer to just keep this remote if that works for everybody. And the idea was to keep it at lunchtime, like 12:30 to 1:30. If people prefer earlier, later, whatever, just I'll send out a feedback thing, and feel free to rail on me, whatever you guys have.
Thanks, everyone.
Be positive. Be positive. There's positive feedback coming your way.
No.
It was a great event. Thank you very much for organizing it. It was very interesting. It was nice to see the people. And if you see how many people registered and how many people attended, if it were to be in person, even less people, you wouldn't get as many people.
Yeah, that's my fear. So so again, we want to give this a shot, and again, we want to just reinvigorate the community.
It's a great initiative, and keep going.
Great.
Thank
So
you.
anyway, so yeah,
Thanks for the initiative.
Thank you. I haven't eaten lunch yet, so I'm getting hungry. So
You deserve it,
yeah.
Giga.
Just for you.
Bye.
Nice. All right, take care, guys. Thanks. Bye.
Nice to meet
Bye.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye all.